Congratulations, you made it to the third video. In this video, we're going to be going over last week's homework. I'm going to talk about the questions. I'm basically just going to answer them how I would answer them. Of course, my answers are not correct answers for anybody else because they are very personalized questions, but this is how I would have answered them, and that should give you an idea of what I was looking for from you. So, question 1. Apply what you've read this week to your own life. Describe 3 characteristics of yourself that have changed over time and how they have changed. Then describe 3 characteristics that have not changed. So, 3 characteristics that have changed are my height, my temper, and my taste in foods. So starting with my height, I've gotten taller. Not as tall as one would hope, but I got taller. I was very small when I was born, and over time I got bigger and bigger and bigger. And then when I was 12, I was 5'1", and I haven't changed at all since I was 12. That's it. I topped out. A lot of people continue growing. So that is how my height has developed over time, and how that development might be different than your development. Then my temper. So when I was a kid, I would lose my temper very easily. I had very little self-control about that. As I've gotten older, I have matured emotionally. I have developed self-control, and now it's very hard to get me to lose my temper. This is very common type of development. Over time, children throw temper tantrums, and as you get older, you develop self-control, you develop the ability to delay gratification, you get more pleasant to society. And that is actually developing, that is how society kind of affects you. If you didn't have this effect of society going, hey, that's not cool, we don't like it when you do that, please stop doing that, we're not going to play with you if you keep doing that, then you probably would continue to not be able to delay gratification. You would continue to want everything now and get very, very upset and lose control when you didn't get your way. And then taste in food. So I really didn't like spicy foods when I was little. I continued not liking spicy foods throughout my teenage years. It turns out I'm allergic to cumin, which is in a lot of spicy foods in the US, and I love spicy foods when they aren't trying to kill me. Go figure. But this has required me to reprogram my brain a little bit, because now I have to remind myself when I'm eating the spicy food that I've made this food and I know it's not going to kill me. It's going to be fine. But yes, so those are 3 things that have changed. 3 things that have not changed are my skin color, my love of reading, and my enjoyment of crafting. So yeah, I'm white. I glow in the dark. It's fun. Not gonna change ever. And don't tell me to go in the sun, because when I go in the sun, I get burned. And then it peels, and I end up paler. Who knew I could be paler? But I can. I love to read. I'm actually a fully qualified children's librarian. Reading is my life. And that hasn't changed. I learned to read when I was 3 years old, and I've loved it ever since. And finally, my love of crafting. So part of this is genetic. I have a very, very good, fine muscle control, and this is something I have continued to hone as I've gotten older. I've gotten better at crafting, but I've always loved doing tiny little movements with my fingers and playing with yarn. In fact, I knit this sweater. It's my latest sweater. I'm very pleased with it, and it's very warm. Cool. So, question number 2. How do you define culture? What cultures and subcultures do you belong to? Describe 2 ways in which your culture has impacted your development. So, the definition of culture, according to the dictionary, is the customs, arts, social institutions, achievements of a particular nation, people, or other social group. Social group is important. So it doesn't just have to be a country, it's a social group. I happen to believe that there are additional things to this definition. So I believe that there are usually linguistic indicators. You share some language. It doesn't have to be that, oh, look, we all speak English. It can be slang terms, or like I talked about in 2 videos ago. But yeah, little linguistic indicators. I believe that there are shared beliefs, that kind of thing. So, I am part of American culture. And because of this, something that has affected this is my core belief that everyone has the right to choose. You have choices, you must strive, all of these things. And you get to do what makes you happy as long as it's not hurting other people. Some Americans leave out that second bit. But anyways, yes, you get to do what makes you happy as long as it's not hurting other people is a core belief that I get from being a part of American culture. A subculture that I am part of is queer culture. So being a part of this culture has affected my development because I tend to be much more accepting of differences and, oh, okay, so cool, whatever. Nothing really bothers me, and I'm very okay with meeting people where they are at. And I think a lot of this is queer culture where everybody's different and we celebrate these differences, so it doesn't really matter anymore. And yeah, that affected my development. Number 3, you read about nature versus nurture this week. Describe one non-physical characteristic that you believe to be nature and one that you believe to be nurture. So, in terms of nature, I believe that gender identity and sexual orientation are nature. You don't get to choose either of those. For nurture, I believe a person's work ethic to be nurture. Now, I'm not saying that certain people are lazy or work harder or anything like that. What I am saying is your willingness to strive to achieve goals and exactly how much effort you are willing to put in and how you calculate effort to reward is going to be based on the environment that you were raised in. So you might be willing to put more work in specific areas depending on how you were raised, what your parents believed in, that kind of thing. What are 2 ethical challenges to human development research? Why is it important to know about these challenges? So there were 5 ethical challenges listed in the textbook, in the reading. If you didn't get the reading, you should have emailed me because I was giving out the reading to everybody. So they are respect for autonomy, beneficence, responsibility, integrity, and justice. So respect for autonomy is respecting people's right to choose, to participate or not to participate, respect that they have control over their own bodies and their own minds and what they do with those. Then you have beneficence. This means do no harm. You are not allowed to harm people while you're doing this research. No harming. Responsibility. So researchers must adhere to professional standards. They must adhere to the ethics board of their university if they are part of a university. And also they have to be mindful of the potential impacts of their research. So you can think of this in terms of the atomic bomb. So Oppenheimer, when the atomic bomb went off over Nagasaki, said, I have become death, bringer of something. The quote will be here. Anywho, he did not realize exactly what the cost would be of his research. And that's something that researchers need to be aware of. If I do this project and I answer this question, what is the potential outcomes later on? Could this research be used to hurt people? Usually the answer is no. But it's important to remember. Destroyer of worlds. That's what it was. I have become death, destroyer of worlds. I remembered it. I'm very pleased with myself. Sorry. Then we have integrity. Researchers must be honest. So you have to tell the truth and you have to report your results accurately and honestly. A really good example of this is the idea that the MMR vaccine causes autism. This was reported in a scientific journal, but the data wasn't accurate, and they didn't actually show causation in the research, but that's what the researchers reported. So actually what happened was 12 children were found to have autism at the age of 18 months after receiving their MMR vaccine at the age of 15 months. This is very common. Everybody gets their MMR vaccine between 15 to 18 months, and the earliest you can be diagnosed with autism is between 18 and 24 months. So pretty much everybody who is diagnosed with autism is going to have received their MMR vaccine earlier. And also think about how many thousands of children get MMR vaccines every year. By the way, if you don't know what MMR stands for, it is measles, mumps, and rubella. So 12 children were found to have autism after having received the vaccine, like every other child. This is correlation, it is not causation. Their research just said, oh look, these 12 children out of the thousands were diagnosed with autism, and yet they reported that because of these 12 children, vaccines cause autism. That is not acceptable. That was a lack of integrity. And then finally we have justice. So you have to make sure that both the risks and the benefits of your research are spread across groups. So that's within the experiment. So if you have a medical experiment or the vaccine studies that are going on right now for COVID, you have a placebo group and an experimental group. And the placebo group are not receiving a vaccine and they don't know whether or not they're receiving a vaccine, and an experimental group that does not know whether or not it is receiving a vaccine. And if it is found that this vaccine is accurate and it works, so it's a good vaccine, the people in the placebo group at the end of this have to be offered the vaccine. They have to be told that they received the placebo and offered the vaccine, because otherwise they cannot benefit from the research. You have to make sure that both sides get the research, get benefit, if possible. If the vaccine is not found to work, then the placebo group doesn't need to get the vaccine. But yes, that is the idea of justice. The final question. Explain the differences between behaviorist and evolutionary theories. Include both, at least two examples. So this is going back to the whole nature versus nurture argument. Evolutionary theories are nature-based. Behaviorist theories are nurture-based. They believe that it's your environment, and the nature ones and evolutionary believe that it's your genes and where you come from. So yes. So a behaviorist theory includes Bandura's social cognitive theory. He believes 5 things. There are 5 steps in this theory, 5 rules to this theory. 1. Learning is not purely behavioral. Rather, it is a cognitive process that takes place in a social context. 2. Learning can occur by observing a behavior and by observing the consequences of the behavior. This is called vicarious reinforcement. So that means you can see your brother get in trouble for smashing a glass. You don't have to smash a glass yourself and get in trouble to learn that maybe you don't want to smash a glass because you saw your brother do it and you saw the consequences. 3. Learning involves observation, extraction of information from those observations, and making decisions about the performance of the behavior. This is called the observational learning model. Therefore, learning can occur without an observable change in behavior. So, the glasses. You saw your brother smash the glass. You saw him get in trouble. You don't need to change your behavior and in order to learn. You can just say, okay, yeah, I'm going to continue not smashing glasses. So your behavior did not change, but you learned not to smash glasses. Hooray for you. 4. Reinforcement plays a role in learning, but is not entirely responsible for learning. So if you continue to see your brother smashing glasses and continue to get in trouble, that will reinforce the idea that maybe you should not smash glasses. And then 5, the learner is not a passive recipient of information. Cognition, environment, behavior, all mutually influence each other. So what you're thinking and the environment influences what you're thinking, which influences your behavior, which influences the environment, which influences what you're thinking, and so on and so forth, around and around and around. That is called reciprocal determinism. Somebody asked about that, so there's your answer. An example of an evolutionary theory, so that was developmental, that was a behaviorist theory, that was Bandura's theory. An evolutionary theory is evolutionary developmental theory. So this believes that development is the result of genes, it is genetically encoded. However, they also say that the environment can change how those genes are expressed. And that gets into epigenetics, which we are talking about this week. I think it's the last slide. Don't skip ahead. You'll want to look at the other slides first. I promise it's a very confusing topic if you skip everything over and just skip to the epigenetics slide. Don't do it. Most theories of development are a mixture of nurture and nature, evolutionary and behaviorist. There are very few theories that believe it is exactly one or exactly the other, because it does seem to be a mix. And I know that makes it messy and complicated, and I'm sorry, but humans are messy and complicated, and if you don't like that, leave psychology now. Great. So if you just go through and watch the rest of the slides, none of the rest of the slides are done by me. And I will see you next week.